You're listening to the Colin Flaherty Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. After listening to President Trump's State of the Union speech last night, I think it's time for all of us on this channel who listen to this podcast to read my books, watch the videos at minds.com/Colin Flaherty. They're on Facebook, Twitter, we're everywhere. So I want to talk to all of you and tell you, well, even a challenge. Isn't it time we were big enough to admit we were wrong about Hillary Clinton? That's the overwhelming sensation I got last night after listening to President Trump's speech. Anybody remember this quote from last year? This is the only thing I remember now from the election last year. Hillary's talking about white people listening to black people.
White Americans need to do a much better job of listening when African Americans talk about the seen and unseen barriers you face every day. We need to recognize our privilege and practice humility rather than assume our experiences are everyone else's experiences.
And so if we listened to black people last night, and I'm talking about listening in the largest possible sense of the word, I mean, if somebody comes up to you and they say, "Hey, Colin, I'm your friend," and they punch me in the nose, I mean, we have to listen in the broader context by thinking, well, he said he was my friend, but then he punched me in the nose. I think I will listen to what he did, not what he said. As a matter of fact, because there's such a difference between what he said and what he did, that makes that person even more dangerous, more deceitful, more somebody you really can't trust on any level. And so what's been the lesson, what's been the message of the last 50 years from the fellas and all their enablers among public officials, reporters, activists, community organizers? I mean, for most of the last 50 years, and they kind of turned on a dime a little while ago, but for most of the last 50 years, the message from the fellas about the fellas is, Colin, we need economic opportunity. We need jobs, Colin. So last night, President Trump announced kind of what a lot of people knew in a way. African American unemployment is reaching a record low level. Any white person who lives in a chocolate city kind of already knows that on one level, if that's the kind of thing you care to pay attention to. There's tons and tons of public service ads on the cable channels, on the newspapers, and the radios, where they're talking about all this free job training. Whether you do it in a classroom at a place where it's free, or you do it online at a place where it's free, you can learn how to code, do code for computer software, do some elementary coding. When you've done the class, if you can do it even halfway decently, you're going to make $25, $30, $35, $50. If you do it decently, $75 an hour. I know that's not much money by Nancy Pelosi standards, but it's what black people have been talking about for a long time. Colin, we need the jobs, Colin. That's the only reason why we're out there bunking people over the head. It's the only reason why large groups of black people are rampaging through shopping centers, rampaging through downtown, as we'll see in a minute, Des Moines. It's the only reason why all the black people go to prison, Colin. They don't have anything else to do because they don't have a job. Any of that sound familiar? And so now Hillary admonishes us, we have to listen to black people. As white people, we have to listen to them. So what were they telling us last night? It actually started a few days ago with Jay-Z. Jay-Z was on CNN. You remember Jay-Z, the guy who stabbed his producer, shot his brother, got into a big fight with his sister-in-law because she found out he was cheating on Beyonce. And no, I do not feel like a better person for having known all those facts. So anyway, CNN, Jay-Z was on, and he was on with one of the fellas, and they were even talking about this whole idea of black employment. And Jay-Z moved the goalpost. It was a preview of the goalpost moving we saw last night. He said, well, it's not about money. It's about whatever. Respect, this, that, the other. It's not about money anymore, Colin. We don't need jobs. We need... Couldn't quite figure out what he said they need other than somehow white people, Asian people, young people, old people, gay people, straight people, kitties, puppies, turtles, Amish, and Eskimos were in charge of giving it to black people. And until we give them this nebulous thing, well then, all this stuff we talk about here all the time is just going to keep happening. The head bonking, wildly out of proportion. The robbery, the murder, the rape, wildly out of proportion. I mean, are we listening? When Jay-Z said that, they said the people in Congress said it last night. When Trump talked about black unemployment, what did they do? Did one person crack a smile? Did one person get off their hands? Did one person congratulate the president, however briefly, in however much of a backhand fashion? No. I mean, we had one guy, Luis Gutierrez. I'm pretty sure his family's from Puerto Rico, but he's all down with the Mexican cause. He stormed out of the chamber when people started shouting that racist chant, USA. That's racism now. Joy Reid said the same thing, that Trump was now cloaking white nationalism and racism. He was using church. I can't even say this now with a straight face. He was using church, God, and country to cloak his speech, to cloak his appeal to all these Klan members out there as if we were back in the 1950s. You remember the 1950s when basically every time you went somewhere, there were Klan members hanging black people from lampposts? Remember that? Yeah, it happens on all the movies. It didn't really happen in real life, but it happened in the movies. So we're not listening to them. The congressmen are screaming at us. They were screaming at us last night. It's not about jobs, you fool. That's what they were saying. They were saying, you bought that stupid line from us? You really believed it when we were talking about jobs. And you really think it took us 60 years to have all these jobs programs that anybody could get into anytime they feel like for basically no money? That's been around for a long time. Anybody who wanted job training could get it in this country, period. But somehow the black unemployment numbers just went down because of this incredible economic expansion that we're in, and the black people in Congress couldn't have cared less because it's not really about jobs, it's not really about money, and what it's really about is black people just aren't into Trump. They're just not into us because they think we're always keeping them down and messing with them. I love the way Hillary put it. Conscious and unconscious. Yes. I mean, isn't this where Rod Serling comes in? Do. Unconscious bias. Yes, Colin, we know what's in your mind, Colin. We know. I mean, this is what a candidate for the president of the United States is telling us. This is what a huge majority of the people on the Democratic side, the liberal side, in the House of Representatives told us last night at the State of the Union speech. And that's the truth. And that's the truth we learn from listening to them. I mean, they're telling us, they might not be telling us that, but that in a narrow way, but in a broader way, they're just telling us we're not really down with the USA. We're not really down with white people. We're not quite sure what we're down with. We just know that black people are always being used and abused here, and we just can't quite figure out enough reasons for it. It happens so much. I mean, one of the places black people are being used and abused on epic levels, apparently, is Des Moines, Iowa. Listen to this story from Des Moines, Iowa, about over 100 black people rampaging through the streets of downtown Des Moines, Iowa, IOWA. Yeah, oh, you didn't know that was a center of black mob violence? You don't remember all the Beat Whitey night stuff at Des Moines, Iowa? Or for 3 nights during the Iowa State Fair, for 3 nights, black people in the fair, out of the fair, attacked white people. Press went to the spokesman, Lori Loverato. She was a sworn officer, spokesman for the police department. Said, Lori, what's up with all this, all this violence at the fair this year? She said, well, black people are going around targeting white people in the fair, out of the fair. It's happening for a couple nights. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. She got fired for that. She got fired for telling the truth about black on white criminality at the Iowa State Fair. She's selling real estate in Iowa now, and I think she hopes to kind of forget that little chapter in her life. But we cannot forget, because it's about something bigger than Laurie. It's about something bigger than the Iowa State Fair. Let's check out this clip. Listen to this clip to me was a good clip till we got to the end. Then it exploded in goodness and truth.
Between some students attracted around 100 spectators yesterday in downtown Des Moines. Police say it led to an attack on an innocent victim, and it forced officers to use pepper spray to control the crowd. Students are now sharing what happened with Channel 13's Justin Surrency.
For students that walk the halls of Des Moines public schools every day, Monday's fight was a long time coming.
It was just building up for too long, and people had to let it out some way, and they just took it out in violence.
Police say the crowd was filled with nearly 100 DMPS students, but only a few of the boys were fighting near 6th and Walnut. Because of the size of the crowd, Cartier Smith said police were forced to use pepper spray.
They didn't really care who got pepper sprayed.
LaRonda Turner witnessed another girl get sprayed.
They maced her, and when they maced her, her shoe came off, and everybody hit ghosts. But when they ran, her shoe came off, and she was crying. They couldn't let her go in the DART station and get no water for her eyes.
She also witnessed the 3 juveniles involved being arrested.
When they take people into custody, they just throw them on the ground like they a piece of, like they just a piece of nothing.
Cartier says school was a lot more calm after Monday's fight.
Everybody had their beefs, their problems, their issues, and I guess they solved it over there.
DART provides 3,500 rides per day to Des Moines Public School students and employees. While they monitor large groups that tend to gather at Central Station, the fight happened blocks away. The witnesses say trying to break it up would have been like throwing gasoline on a fire.
It was like split down the middle on sides. It was like 2 big different sides. So everybody's finna be fighting, and that's nowhere good. The cops wouldn't, they would have had to call for more cops if that was the case. So I feel like jumping in is not the right way to handle it. So let them fight it out.
That mentality is why Hip Hope, a local nonprofit using arts and culture to provide an alternative to violence, spent part of the afternoon Tuesday speaking with kids who got off the bus near Central Station.
Promote and advocate for hope where symptoms of hopelessness are prevalent. And when you got 100 kids out here, and violence erupts and things like that, that's a big symptom that needs to be addressed.
In Des Moines, Justin Surrency, Channel 13 News.
To clarify here, Des Moines Public School students and employees have unlimited access to DART transportation. Des Moines Public School officials are waiting for police to finish up their investigation before they hand down any further punishments to those students who were involved.
So when we say truth, we're not necessarily saying this guy is telling us what is right and wrong, what is correct. No, we're just saying he's speaking his heart. He's speaking what he truly believes. And he believes that somehow the black people careening and doing all this crazy stuff in Des Moines, Iowa is a symptom. Symptom of what? It's a symptom of 440, 400, 4,000, no, 4 million. Or could it be 4 billion years of white racism inflicted on black people in Des Moines, Iowa? Oh, is that why there's other stories like this around Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and Ames? Oh, you didn't know black violence against white people was a thing in Iowa? The Iowa newspapers don't tell us. They like running editorials reminding people that the only reason there's a whole bunch of black people in prison in Iowa way out of proportion is because of relentless white racism directed at black people, then the narrative drops off. Then it's like, well, why are they in prison? They didn't do anything? Or the cops are ignoring the white people. Then it kind of scatters, and all of a sudden, somebody's changing the subject. So that's how they roll in Iowa. And so why don't we go through a couple of other stories here, just about, black on white violence, black criminality, and how people have so many excuses for it. Then we're going to hear a few stories at the end here where we're going to hear about white on black violence. And we're going to, and you'll be able to see the difference between, remember, we don't do hypotheticals here, right? We just use facts. So we don't say, well, if that were a bunch of white kids going through that town, they would have reported it a lot differently. No, we don't do hypotheticals. We just use the facts. So we're going to show you the difference between what happens on black on white violence versus allegations of white on black violence, how totally different they appear in the press. So why don't we start up here in Philadelphia? A student at Drexel University is raped by one of the fellas. Anybody connecting any dots here?
Tonight, Drexel students are on alert after a classmate was sexually assaulted inside her apartment. Police say the woman woke up with a man on top of her. NBC 10's Miguel Martinez-Valle has details now on the crime that has students really concerned.
If they got into one of my neighbors' houses, why couldn't they get into mine? And so just to know that it was that close and that close to campus was a little eerie.
University students unnerved and unsettled following an off-campus sexual assault Saturday morning.
Maybe months, maybe even last year since I saw something this serious. Certainly something this close I don't think I've ever seen.
Police gave us this surveillance video taken before the assault. They tell us this man in a green hoodie lighting up a smoke got into a university student's apartment, sexually assaulted her, and fell asleep. He was in the apartment from 3:30 a.m. to before 7 a.m., got away before police could arrest him. Police also had this clue.
The offender continued to refer to her as by the name of Nicole during this assault.
Michael Kane lives on the street where the assault happened. He got this alert from Drexel University hours after he first heard the sirens and saw the detectives.
We have one lock on our door. Is that enough? Do we need to change the locks? How did this guy even get in?
While police say he likely got in through an unlocked door, they say students should take precaution both inside and outside their home. Students say the university alerts help them stay vigilant.
We always try to walk together, especially late at night. It's definitely a concern. It's not something that you like to see happen in a place that I have to live.
I think it's just really important to remain safe and think about where you are at all times. And that's not something you necessarily want to do, but it's something you have to do.
Why don't we head down to Washington, D.C. to the local NBC affiliate. They're talking about our old buddies at Ballou High School. There was a month ago, there was a case of a special needs student, a handicapped student. He might have been somewhere on the autism spectrum, also autism disorder spectrum. Now I'm talking like they talk. But whatever it was, he was a special needs student and he was in school and somebody wanted to borrow his phone. Translation, I'm stealing your phone, okay? And I will let you have a way out without being too totally humiliated, because I'm just going to tell you I'm borrowing it. I'm just going to take it and put it in my pocket. Capiche? You understand that? Yeah, he understood it. That's why he didn't give him the phone. That's why this happened.
Jovan Smith says he got attacked at his school, stemming from a fight over his cell phone. Jovan died yesterday, but exactly what happened to the 17-year-old, police are still trying to figure out. News 4's Pat Collins is live at Ballou High School in Southeast with the latest details for us. Pat, what are you learning?
Jim, on January 10th, Jovan Smith was beaten up inside Ballou High School. Yesterday, he died in a hospital. Did one thing lead to another? Police are trying to figure out what happened here. Jovan Smith died yesterday. He was a 17-year-old special needs student at Ballou High School. About 3 weeks ago, he was beaten up inside the school. The cause of his death undetermined, but police are working the case. Paul Pennyman is a tutor. He was inside Ballou today as word spread about the death of Jovan. What does something like this do to a school?
Well, you know, I think the kids are in a certain way numb already. And I've worked at schools where there have been deaths before, and it's almost like it's almost another day for them because they have so many peers who die from various reasons from time to time, and it's almost a numbing effect.
According to a police report obtained by News 4, Jovan was beaten inside a classroom at Ballou on January the 10th. It says he was struck by 3 suspects several times about his face and body. They say he was beaten because he wouldn't let the suspects use his cell phone. According to the police report, Jovan said he was sprayed about the body with what he described as perfume. In another section of the report, it indicates that an acid or chemical was used. Again, up until now, this is just a death investigation. So far, no cause. So far, no charges. Jim, back to you.
No charges, Pat, but has the school taken action against those other students?
I don't think they've been able to identify the other students. I don't know if the police have been able to take any charges against the other students. All we have is the incident report. So far, we don't have any information about any arrests.
Now, the parents on another channel that didn't have the video on this, the parents are out there saying, no, there's no doubt that this kid was injured in that attack. He was injured from the day of the attack till the day he died. He had blood clots, other complications. He died of the attack. And this is Ballou. You remember the story we just did on Ballou, right? Where 15, 16 months ago, the principal came out and said 100% of our students are going to graduate, 100% are going to get accepted into college. That was a national story. And local news and national black magazines and websites around the country, radio shows, everybody was celebrating what could happen with black students if we give them the proper resources. Well, it turned out to be a hoax. The principal was fudging the numbers. The principal was cooking the books. Turns out that, tons and tons of people, weren't passing their class. They weren't even going to class. They were getting passing grades. They're getting marked present when they weren't there. One big fraud. One big hoax. Ballou isn't really any different than any of your other average black schools around the country. They're just not a place where anybody's learning. It's just a place like in Baltimore. There are 16 black high schools, 16, where nobody can read, write, or do arithmetic above a 3rd grade level. That means you can't read or write because the state levels are basically non-existent for 3rd grade. Think about it. Think about the level of 3rd grade reading. What that means. That means when you're in kindergarten, if you don't basically it means lots of kindergartners can read at a 3rd grade level. Nobody, zero at these 16 black high schools can read at that level. The level of violence, mayhem, is just ridiculously high. We just posted a video on Minds.com the other day from Baltimore where we reminded people about the teachers who are in shell shock because teachers are subject to violence there every day. Now why don't we move back up to Westchester County? If you've ever been up to Westchester, been up there a few times. I have relatives up there. That's where the rich relatives used to live. I don't know what it's like today, but the newspaper here, we did a story 2 weeks ago about a little, white girl walking into a Dunkin' Donuts. A bunch of the fellas and their lovely ladies came in to start a fight with her. They stabbed her. She died. Now no mention of the whole black on white thing. It was a black on white thing. Now, yesterday, the New York Post they'll come back a couple weeks later and go, well, here's the big picture of what really happened. And not only did this white chick die, they don't tell us she's white, they show us the picture of her and her attackers, but it's happened 2 other times. Large groups of people are going around beating the hell out of people in and out of the school. It's a black thing at Westchester. And now the paper, the New York Post, and all the other papers up there, nobody's connecting the dots. Nobody's saying, hey, that's a black thing, isn't it? Isn't that a black thing? This large-scale violence in schools. They told us more about the story of this little white girl that got killed. She was a little social justice warrior. Maybe she thought she was down with the cause. She was actually kind of cutting school, ended up in Dunkin' Donuts. She kind of, they were attacking her. She fought back. They killed her. But the kick I got out of the New York Post story was, it's a long story. In the newspaper business, my guess is that would be about a 25-inch story. Most stories, that's column inches. That's how you measure stories in the news business. And my guess, a regular story in the Post would be about half that length, 10, 12, 15 inches. This was easily twice that length. And the second half of the story was, well, we got a bullying thing going on here. It's bullying. Nobody's connecting the dots. Nobody's saying that violence in schools is a black thing. Nobody's saying that, if anybody brings up the fact that black people are suspended and expelled from school at 3, 5, 7, 10 times the rate of white students, nobody says, well, maybe they're acting out. Now listen to me, acting out. Maybe they're more violent than white students. No, the only time we ever hear that number is when somebody's right behind it, reminding us that white teachers are picking on black students for no reason whatsoever. Do you realize how hard it is to get kicked out of high school? Especially for the last 8 years when Obama was president? Every teacher in America will tell you this. You know what, teachers? Ask them. Ask them if they're picking on black kids in schools, or if black people are directing relentless hostility and violence at teachers and other students. Ask them. We've asked them many times, and we always get the same answer. Violence in schools is a black thing. Mayhem in schools is a black thing. And they call it bullying, and all of a sudden this bullying has no color whatsoever. Every other story we see in the paper, it's like, if there's any violence going on, it's like, okay, we don't know nothing about that. But, if people getting kicked out of school, it's all, let's talk about racism. People getting bad grades, let's talk about racism. Lots and lots of people getting the hell beat out of them in school. You want to call it bullying. And nobody wants to talk about the racial element of that, even though we've documented hundreds and hundreds of cases of that, more than that. Hundreds of videos, thousands of cases. Not one reporter has the nuts to stand up and say, yeah, I think that's a black thing. We're going to get back to the school thing in a minute, because I really want to dot the I and cross the T on this. But I couldn't let this story go that just appeared yesterday. This happened in 2013. It just came, the conviction, and it's just coming to trial now. The trials are just beginning and ending now. 5 years ago, some of the fellas lured a white guy into a hotel room and then tortured him and killed him. It's on video. You had to show the video. The hotel video shows everybody going in and going out. The end of the trial. Well, let's listen to this. The black defendant accused the judge of being racist and unfair.
Moments after a jury convicts a man of murder, he curses and threatens the judge as deputies force him out of the courtroom. News Channel 5's Alyssa Hyman was in the courtroom when this happened. She joins us now with the details. Alyssa?
Kelly, we were the only TV crew in the courtroom when Jeff D. Joseph erupted into anger, screaming and cursing at the judge immediately after the guilty verdict was read.
I will be back. I'm going home. I'm going home.
Jeffrey Joseph was escorted out of the courtroom today, screaming and yelling at the judge, calling him a racist and biased. As late this afternoon, a panel of 12 jurors found Joseph guilty of first-degree murder for the killing of Gustav Cabral back in 2013. Prosecutors argued that Cabral responded to an online ad to meet an escort at a Motel 8 in Pompano. When he got there, prosecutors say two men, Ilmar Christoph and Jeffrey Joseph, kidnapped him and took him to a vacant home in Lake Worth, where detectives say they eventually shot him to death. Cabral's wife broke down in tears after hearing the 4 guilty verdicts, finally getting the justice she was waiting for. As for the outbursts, the judge took swift action.
I am suspending any communication privileges that he has. He will not be able to use any phones or write any letters to any family members. And that's based on his threats to the court and his statements to the court.
And the jury will return in 2 weeks to determine whether Joseph should get the death penalty in this case. Now, the other man accused in this case, Ilmar Christoph, he will stand trial later this year.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're somebody that's on trial for killing a white kid 5 years ago and your trial took 5 years to come to court. Or if you're somebody like some radio personality with a fake doctorate degree. Well, it wasn't fake. Let's just say it didn't come from a very credible institution who were going to meet this guy. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's reading on the same script. Black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. Right after Des Moines, especially when I first started doing this, I started seeing all these stories out of Des Moines. I was going, what the hell's going on in Des Moines? But just as shocked as I was about Des Moines, it probably shows I don't get out enough. I was equally shocked, but I'm long overcome that shock. Equally shocked about Minneapolis, St. Paul. We've done tons of stories about that. I even did a podcast about it. I think I posted it. It's still up there. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, just figure out a way to do it and subscribe. But the podcast was... I was on Minneapolis radio, WCCO, CBS affiliate, Drive Time. And because I had written an article for American Thinker saying, hey, this is Minneapolis. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in Minneapolis. And, you know, by now, our style here is we don't really do the general take my word for it thing. No, if I say somebody had their hair set on fire, I'm going to say her hair set on fire this date by that person. It was a white person setting the hair on fire of a black person, or vice versa. So that's what we did in Minneapolis. So I was going to Minneapolis and we said, oh yeah, Minneapolis, large groups of black people are rampaging through downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul in the day, in the morning, in the evening, at supper time, at nighttime, when the clubs let out, or when the games let out, when the Timberwolves let out, when the Twins let out. And they're just targets for black people who live in Minneapolis. And if you're ever in Minneapolis and you find yourself on a street called Hennepin Street, it's probably not where you want to be unless you're prepared to defend yourself, okay? I mean, my favorite story out of Minneapolis, or the most, when I say favorite, I mean the most edifying story. It came 2 St. Patrick's Days ago. Bunch of people doing, marching down through downtown Minneapolis. A bunch of people who, that's their thing. They want to say they're Irish, so they're marching, including 3 generations of one family. 75 to 100 black people rampaged through that parade and beat the piss out of that family. 3 generations. Now remember, this is a town that has raised denial, deceit, and delusion to an art form when it comes to violence from black people who live in Minneapolis and the Somalis who live there by the tens and tens of thousands. I don't know what the exact number of Somalis is in Minnesota, but it's enormous. I think I saw 250,000 once. I don't know if that's a good number. It's huge. Anyway, so this happened, and the next day the reporter came out and did his indignant, columnist came out and did his indignant, hey, how could this have happened? Why didn't anybody tell us this is happening? This is the same columnist they'd write 1 or 2 columns a week, and when in between writing columns, they hang out in bars and tell everybody how overworked they are. And how nobody appreciates their great stories because everybody, because kids are online these days. They don't like great newspapers anymore. That's his racket. Anyway, he spent most of the previous year to that, spent a good chunk of it writing columns about Donald Trump. How Donald Trump was dumb, stupid, ignorant, doesn't know anything. He's a clown. He's a buffoon. Yet all this racial violence, black on white violence, is happening in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, in St. Paul. And he totally ignored it. And then when it happens again to somebody he knew in a parade, he looks up and goes, man, how did this ever happen here without us knowing? It happened without us knowing because you were in charge of letting us know, and you've been in active denial, deceit, and delusion about it your whole damn life. So don't bring that on us when you know damn well what happens. And after that, of course, in Minneapolis, you could set, you don't even need a sundial. You don't need clocks in Minneapolis because every 3 months exactly, the people downtown have a meeting. It's always the same meeting. It's always, maybe it's a different cast of business leaders, but it's always the same politicians and cops. They go, hey, does anybody else notice there's a lot of black people attacking our customers downtown? Whether they're in our restaurant, on the street, in the bus, riding the bike around, riding the metro up there. Does anybody notice that? We got to do something about this. Everybody gets together, the cops show up, and the cops come in, they explain how safe downtown Minneapolis is, how all the stuff they're doing. Then it just keeps happening. Every 3 months that happened. And so anyway, I was talking about this and a lot more on WCCO radio at CBS. I was on for, a good 20 minutes. Well, I think his name was John. I forget his John something or other. Anyway, so after about 20 minutes, John was polite enough. But remember, I was being very specific. I knew more about Minneapolis, I think, than he and his producer did. So after about 20 minutes, he said, Colin, I'm not 100% sure I'm buying this. But there wasn't really anything to buy, right? Because I wasn't asking him to believe anything other than that happened. And either it did happen or it didn't happen. Okay? And if you say anything I say happened, if you say it doesn't happen, there's an easy way people, settle these disputes. What somebody does is they say, Colin, I bet you $100. That never happened. I'm still waiting to make still waiting for somebody to take me up on that. So anyway, I was gently escorted off the air. And then for the next 10, 15 minutes, the producer here, the radio personality and the producer was 100% down with the cause. He was saying, oh no, I don't believe any of that. That's not happening. Color has no crime in Minnesota. And, but I knew as soon as I was off the air, as soon as I got off the air, the floodgates were going to open because they were going to do open phones and people were going to call with their own experiences. That's what happened, one after another. The most horrific, lady called up. I still remember her going, yeah, my son, this happened to my son. A bunch of black people beat the crap out of him, really hurt him really bad. And it's all on camera. I went to get the tape. The cop said, no, they're not going to get the video. They're too busy. I went to get it. They wouldn't give it to me. And then the talk show host goes, oh yeah, that sounds like the case Colin was talking about. No, it was a totally different case. It's like yesterday somebody posted on my Twitter feed, Colin, did you see this 62-year-old teacher getting the hell beat out of him in a classroom by one of the fellas? I said, man, you got to narrow it down because I can think of a half a dozen to a dozen of those cases where that's happened. On video. So you got to give me something better than that, okay? And so one person after another kept calling this radio station. And finally at the end, saying, oh yeah, well, I don't know if Colin's right or not, but this is what happened to me. People getting guns pulled on them and robbed after the sporting events. We have a lot of listeners in Minneapolis. There's a couple of Facebook pages in Minneapolis that are devoted to crime. I think one's called North Minneapolis. There's a couple up there. People in some people in Minnesota, if you lived up there for a long time, you still believe in that thing called Minneapolis nice, Minnesota nice. If you've ever spent any time up there, which I have in the northern part of Minnesota, you experience it. Everybody's just nice. You walk into a store, people nod, they're very friendly, they'll open the door, they punch your button in the elevator. There's no problem, there's no drama. That's why people in Minneapolis are such soft targets for this. I mean, what about the school, the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis? The crime on the campus was the students, I mean, as soft and as easy targets as the people who live there are. Think about how soft their children are when they go to college. And when they go to college, the first thing they learn is white people are relentless victims of relentless, black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And so if you are down with the cause will be down with you. So you don't have anything to worry about on this campus. Dozens of students found out the hard way how untrue that was when they became victims of black violence in and around that campus. You know, because of the Cleary reports, if somebody, the newspapers can, they can say whatever they want and they will omit the facts as they please, which is what they do often. I'll never forget the guy at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. He's doing a story about a place we're about ready to hear about, the Nicollet Mall. There were like a dozen attacks in a month, large groups of black people just rampaging through, beating the piss out of people. And he does a story, did one, the other. And finally, he did a roundup story after about a month of these things. And he goes, we just can't quite put our finger on the pattern. There is no pattern to this violence. So that's how they're rolling up there. And that's how they tried to roll at the campus. But see, they can do that in the paper. But when you start filling out Cleary reports, if somebody gives you a description, you better put that description down on the report. Some colleges are trying to fudge this. And they're trying to say, well, we don't want, the fact that they're black doesn't have anything to do with anything other than it's wildly out of proportion a black thing. And that's what was happening at the University of Minnesota. Everybody's putting down the Cleary reports. Yeah, a bunch of black people just attacked me, robbed me over and over and over again. So, it was on the reports. It was on the website. You could see it. Six black groups on campus, groups of students and teachers. They got together. This was a thing at this campus. They went to the university president and they said, hey, we really feel poorly about reading all these stories about black people committing all this crime on the campus. So at this point, they had two choices, right? One, they could say, yes, we want to help educate black people about they should stop bonking white students over the head and stealing their laptops and their money. That was one choice. Second choice, which they did, was they said, no, you have to stop reporting that the black people are committing this crime because it makes us feel really poorly. Of course, the university president came out and said, yeah, we're going to do that as much as legally we can. And so they go through every loophole they can to avoid reporting that black people are committing crimes on the campus. Sometimes you can't avoid but putting it on the Cleary report. Boy, that would be a nice thing for the Department of Education to take up, to kind of reamp up this Cleary report, because a lot of people are getting kind of slack about it. They're going to get harder and harder to find on these college websites. But anyway, let's go back. Let's flash forward to today, to Minnesota. So the Super Bowl is this weekend. Now, in Minnesota right now, Minneapolis right now is an armed camp. Now, it's an armed camp. They won't really say why, just say for safety, but it's a terrorism thing. The fact that there is an enormous number of Somalis with Islamic sympathies that live there, it's got to be on people's radar. So that's what the officials are thinking. But if you listen to the people in this clip we're going to see, they're talking about how they feel safe coming downtown, which they don't normally feel safe coming downtown, because downtown is a place where people are attacked. White people are victims of black criminality with regularity. So they're getting kind of a twofer in Minnesota this weekend in Minneapolis. One, they get helicopters. I mean, it's full on, right? Helicopters, National Guard, sheriffs. You're going to see what it is in a second. But they're also getting a brief respite from the threat of black criminality on the streets of downtown Minneapolis, which has troubled so many for such a long time.
Each block, people will see some form of law enforcement, security, even the National Guard. And that doesn't count everything that's going on behind the scenes. WCCO's Jeff Wagner talked with visitors to see how they feel about all this extra protection. Wait.
Up and down the Nicollet Mall, Super Bowl Live is filled with can't-miss fun.
Don't miss the ice carving, the LII carving, that was great.
Super convenient, everything is laid out well to get around.
Then there's what you can't miss, even if you tried, like big old Paul Bunyan and Babe, volunteers around every corner, and security, security, security.
I mean, you don't see men with machine guns every day.
Whether they're wearing tactical gear or a typical winter uniform, law enforcement have a noticeable presence in and around the 6-block stretch of Super Bowl Live. National Guard members and their Humvees are helping direct traffic. In a matter of minutes on one street corner, we saw several police dogs sniffing around for anything suspicious.
Personally, I was happy. I mean, I think it means that they are out here, they mean business.
It's too bad they have to do it, but I'm glad they're here.
Simply walking near the IDS Center can result in a security check. People must open their jackets and bags, even get a pat-down, just to continue down the sidewalk.
This way. Can I have you guys open your jackets for me?
We saw a similar checkpoint inside the Dayton building as people tried to use an escalator.
Unfortunately, that's the way we kind of do, but I'd rather go through that and be safe.
What people can't see are the officers monitoring the surveillance cameras hovering above. Combined with the boots on the ground, it all adds up to hundreds, if not thousands of eyes watching over everybody.
They're going to make sure nothing's going on, and it makes me feel safe to bring my kids down.
Jeff Wagner, WCCO 4 News.
How many stories have we done in my books, on my YouTube channels, Twitter, Facebook, radio appearances? I mean, how many have we done about black violence in schools? How many? How many have we done on black on white violence in schools? How many podcasts have we done with featuring white students who went to black schools, and how the most dangerous time to be in that school is now, is February, is Black History Month. Because everybody turns up the volume on the institutional racial resentment that is part and parcel of every school in America, but especially popular in black schools. And when we do, and when we talk about this violence directed at white kids in black schools, or the violence directed at the neighbors, or at the administrators, or at the staff, or at the other parents, or at local storekeepers. When we talk about that, is anybody ever connecting the dots and going, hey, what's up with black people? Why are they destroying the school and the neighborhood? What's up with that? No, instead we get a lame discussion of bullying. Very generic discussion where people are going, no, I don't know what's up with that violence. It's probably, hey, Colin, bullying has no color, Colin. Well, down in Atlanta, a place called Paulding County. I mean, I don't know what to make of the story other than there's just people talking about something without showing me what the hell they're talking about.
For weeks, we've been telling you about complaints of a lack of response to bullying in Paulding County schools. Much of it has been racial.
That's right. Officials accused of playing favorites when it comes to helping the victims. And tonight we've learned that one student even had her hair set on fire.
Now, even more shocking than that, when confronted by the CBS 46 Bulldog, the district says they haven't heard a single parent complaint. Our chief investigator, Jonathan Carlson, he's here now. And Jonathan, are they just lying about this?
Well, for starters, we've got a letter from parents to the superintendent right here. When I tried to talk to the superintendent today, I couldn't even get past a spokeswoman who didn't seem too concerned about any of this. Racially charged incidents in the Paulding County School District.
It's a shame that it's happening in our schools.
From high school cheerleaders posting a video with racial slurs without apparent punishment to repeated cases of racial bullying, the latter coming to our attention by way of concerned parents and students like Arnina Warren.
And you're a monkey, or you don't belong in our school because of
because of the skin color.
She's a freshman at North Paulding High School.
I will be at the Paulding County School.
And just today, the district, the talk of drive time radio in Atlanta, with the NAACP and local activists announcing possible plans for a protest march here. You'd think Superintendent Dr. Brian Otot would want to reassure parents. We've spent weeks attempting to question him. Our reporters, like the parents we've spoken to, have largely been ignored. We decided it was time to see where Dr. Otot has been hiding. We visited district headquarters today. Jonathan Carlson with CBS 46, how are you? Hoping to talk to the superintendent about some of the racial issues that have been going on.
He is not available.
Okay. We've made a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails asking for comment, and we're here right now because he hasn't really answered any questions. We've heard from a lot of parents that are concerned about racial bullying in the district, and they haven't heard anything from the superintendent to calm their fears.
Y'all are on private property, so y'all need to stop filming, first of all.
Okay. So would you like us to leave?
Yes, I would like to leave.
Okay, so the superintendent
He is not going to.
will not answer any questions.
Nope.
No accountability from him.
He's not going to.
Does not want to answer any concerns from parents about racial issues here.
If he hears from parents personally, he will respond.
But he's not heard from any parents.
He's not heard from any parents.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That last part, not true, according to parents who sent us a copy of a joint letter they sent the superintendent days ago. Today, we wanted the opinions of local parents, not part of the complaints, about the lack of a district response.
They should be transparent about it. They should let everyone know. You know, why try covering it up? Obviously, they didn't do a really good job because here you are speaking to me and I didn't know.
Again, this was the subject of drive time radio this morning with thousands listening, and the district is either tone deaf or doesn't seem to care. If you have something I need to investigate or someone I need to hold accountable, email me at thebulldog@cbs46.com. Sharon?
Our Bulldog, thanks. And I happen to know many thousands were listening today. We're joined right now by radio host, CBS 46 political analyst, Dr. Rashad Ritchie. And Rashad, I know you talked to very upset parents. We'll get to that. But I want you to address what the spokesperson said there, that he hasn't gotten a single complaint, the superintendent?
Let me be very clear. Let's get that camera right. Dr. Otot, I'm Dr. Ritchie, and you are lying. This letter came from a coalition of parents on behalf of their children in the school system saying we need a meeting. This has to stop and it's gone too far. January 25th, Dr. Otot sent a letter directly to those parents, not talking about the meeting, but he says in part, our district leadership has already contacted an independent consultant to assist in our continual review of our culture and climate and determining any actions if needed.
So that seems pretty clear. The superintendent, by his own words there, is in receipt of several complaints. And just so you know, we'll get you full transparency. We'll put that online. We'll upload it to cbs46.com so you can read the letters for yourself. What are parents saying that the teachers are doing or not doing about this? Again, hair set on fire, repeatedly called the N-word. Those are serious allegations, and they seem to be, at this point, not isolated.
Not isolated. They are systemic. They're part of the culture of Paulding County. I've spoken with many parents, as well as a couple of elected officials who have made this very clear. Let me say this. The parents are doing all they can do to try to change the reality of their children. Here's the honest truth. Minutes ago, Dr. Otot finally sent a letter to this coalition of parents saying he's now willing to meet with them finally. That has happened. Why did this happen? Because of Ayanna Crystal, because my radio show today, calling his office all day.
Because the Bulldog showed up today.
And the Bulldog showing up today. It takes all of that. It takes all of that for you to have a conversation with parents about children in your school system, calling people the N-word and threatening individuals because they're black.
We talked about it yesterday, but I have to ask it again. Why? I know that Paulding County, as we've reported, 77% white. That doesn't mean that people don't understand each other or can't have some empathy. Why won't they just do what seems like the right thing and look into this and remedy it if it needs to be?
That's a great question. And my answer would be part of the culture that protects these individuals in the school system is connected to them. That's my only conclusion here. at the moment. So we'll see what happens. Finally, he's willing to meet. Let me read the quote quickly. He says, Dr. Otot, I am certainly open to your invitation for open, honest, and two-way communication. Dr. Otot, these are parents and not children. You should address them as such.
So let's hold them accountable. We'll hold the superintendent to that. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, late breaking news. We appreciate you so much.
Kept hearing about a girl's hair set on fire. But if you read these, if you listen to it, if you read the story, they do the old passive voice trick. A black girl's hair was set on fire. Who set the hair on fire? I mean, you got to give me something more than just some race-conscious, racially hostile black guy with a phony baloney degree saying that white racism is running and violence is running rampant in Atlanta when it's the other way around. They sent the bulldog out there. No. You know what the bulldog is? The bulldog needs a seeing eye dog. That dude is blind. Nobody is in Atlanta. I've never seen a story in Atlanta on the enormous amount of violence, black violence, on the Atlanta Metro train, whatever they call it. I think they call it MARTA down there. Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority or something like that. And what about crime in Atlanta? Atlanta's an enormous chocolate city. The mayor just got elected. Says the only reason she got elected was because of black girl magic power. So everybody knows what the cause is. Everybody's down with the cause. And part of being down with the cause, if white people wander into a place where they're not supposed to be, i.e. everywhere, nobody's going to get too upset about them becoming victims of horrific crime and violence. But you let some clown on a radio show make up stuff that he hasn't come even close to showing us actually happened. And it's all hands on deck. Listen to this one. And this is the same thing. Same thing at American University in Washington, D.C. Just listen to this first. And you tell me what you think about it.
Racially charged incidents have been a problem on the campus of American University. Students protesting back in May after bananas were found hanging around campus one day after the first African-American student body president was elected. Then in September, Confederate flag posters with cotton balls were found. Students sounded off at town halls.
I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know what actions the university intends to take.
A few months later, a detailed plan of action.
We've announced a plan today to work on these issues because we know we have work to do.
In an exclusive interview with News 4, President Sylvia Burwell explained their plan for what she's calling inclusive excellence.
As part of the plan, we used analytics and data, and we're transparent about the fact that a number of our students of color feel like they don't belong.
Some of the data university officials collected says only 33% of African American students felt included on campus, compared to 71% of white students, and less than 60% of Hispanic, Asian, and international students.
We've increased and made easier our bias reporting so that those who need to report know how to do it and can do it in an easier fashion. We have also been piloting curricular changes.
A new course called the American University Experience will become mandatory for freshmen starting in the fall of 2018.
I do agree.
We had a chance to sit in on one of the classes, which focuses on diversity, race relations, and self-identity.
The big factor in being able to have a healthy discussion about different topics.
President Burwell says the university will focus on increasing the number of minority students and faculty members on campus. It's not a plan that will be effective right away, but over time, Burwell says she's hopeful the new changes will make AU a place where everyone knows and feels like they belong. Reporting in Washington, Megan Fitzgerald, News 4.
You just heard that somebody hung up, and we don't know who did any of this stuff, right? Whatever it was, A, nobody got hurt. B, we don't know who did it. Hanging a banana, a Confederate sign, the other thing that didn't hurt anybody. We don't know who did it. But we do know that racial hoaxes are commonplace on college campuses, and it is up to them if they're going to come at us saying, yeah, white racism is rampant at the university, American University. You've got to give me something other than black people don't feel very good about being there. Good Lord, what do you think black kids have been learning at school for the last 12 years? What do you think they learned during Black History Month? They learn that they are victims of relentless white racism. Then they go into your college, and what do you think they're going to bring with them? Do you think they're going to wipe their slate clean and go, well, you're a different kind of white person? You're not the racist kind of white person. You're the good kind of white person. You're the kind of white person that's going to pat us on the head, give us lots of free stuff, and hope we don't start any fights with anybody. Yeah, you're a good person. No, that's not how they roll. They go into the campus bringing this incredible attitude of racial hostility with them. They ask them a question. 30% said, well, I don't really feel part of what's happening around here. How many times have we heard that? Hey, why did the fight? Why was there 100 black people rampaging through that movie theater? Why were 100 black people rampaging through that bar? Why were 100 black people rampaging through the entertainment district of St. Louis, the Del Mar Loop? Same reason. They didn't reach out to the black people. It's the white person's fault. It's American University's fault. That these they've taken these ridiculous hoaxes and blown them up into something bigger. And now the campus is going to spend, did you get that number? I don't have any idea how you spend $121 million on what they're talking about. We have a lot of work to do, Colin. Yeah, hey, Madam President, have you checked your Cleary reports lately? We did a story just a couple days ago about an American University student walking around just off campus. A bunch of black people come and stuck a gun in his face and stole his car. Does that ring a bell? Do you think that was a one-off thing? Do you think that was like isolated? Do you think crime has no color? American University students are targets in the chocolate city of Washington, D.C. It's not a neighborhood thing. It's a thing where everybody, black people in Washington and the surrounding areas, lots of black people live in D.C. and the surrounding areas. They look at that collection of soft white liberal students, social justice warriors. They look at it and they say, good Lord, can it really be that easy just to walk up to somebody, steal their $3,000 computer, take their card, take their bank card, threaten them to get the passcode, threaten them to get the code to open their phone up? Is it really that easy? I mean, if we do that a lot to students at American University, is the president of that college really going to ignore everything that we did and then blame white people for not making black people feel welcome on the campus? The answer is, yeah, that's how ridiculous it is. The answer is not one station in Washington, D.C. will report this level of black on white crime and violence in D.C. No, they are totally down with the cause. I mean, we did it. We've done this. Once we use a clip 10 times, please, I'm not going to do it again. If you want me to, I will. I mean, this same station, this NBC station out of D.C., they had a big discussion. I'm thinking of two of them. I'm thinking one where the big anchor looks in the camera and goes, being black is exhausting. I mean, black people are constantly having to explain stuff to white people that they can't explain. What's up with that black level of criminality? And they go, oh, man, I don't like explaining this, Colin, man, because you don't understand. Because you remember, Colin, you don't remember what Hillary said? She said, you're not listening. I'm listening, believe me. I'm listening more closely to you than any human being's ever listened to another human being on this planet. Well, Colin, you just don't get it. And then there's the other we had a panel discussion featuring a college professor, a law professor, whose racial venom dripped off her face, much like Joe Kennedy's face was dripping with drool last night in his post-speech reply to President Trump's State of the Union address. Then the one guy who was, I think he turned out to be a minister. I mean, he went to a long dissertation about how, we got this reason, that reason, this reason, that reason. That's why these are the reasons for all this black dysfunction. And how can anybody not see that? Well, you convinced somebody. You convinced this president at American University to spend $121 million to perpetuate the greatest hoax of our lifetime. $121 million to convince people that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. But here's the thing. The black people already know that. Well, maybe that's the problem, They think the white kids have to learn it. With the diversity course. We get a lot of stories here. Get a lot of stories I can't use. But sometimes I hate leaving them on the cutting room floor, but if I put out too many stories, I feel like we're going to overwhelm people. I mean, we could do 10 videos a day, easy. But I keep it to 2 to keep it manageable for you guys to keep up with what we're up to. That's why these podcasts are good. They kind of help me fill in the blanks with a lot of stuff that we are left unsaid because of time and space constrictions on the videos. But man, this week I must have gotten at least 5, maybe 10 emails from people going, "Hey, Colin, there's a hoax at the University of Maryland. A former employee was caught spraying graffiti, racial graffiti in the bathrooms and whatnot. Really hateful stuff." I thought, that's just another case of sometimes a website will grab something that's a year or 2 old and present it. They won't say it's new. They'll just present it as if it is. Then somebody will send it to me and go, Colin, did you see this? I said, yeah, we did that story when it came out 2 years ago. I'm thinking of that story that's making the rounds now that came out a couple years ago where a black person was breaking into a woman's house in Miami. She comes home, sees him coming out of the window. He starts coming at her. She shoots him dead. His sister outside and the family all complaining she didn't have to shoot him. She could have run away. She could have done this. She could have done that. And then she got down to the truth, which is, where do you expect my brother to get his money? That's how life is in the hood. When that story was going around, for some reason, he just got new life a few weeks ago, and it's going around. I must have gotten 20 of them. So I got this thing from the University of Maryland, and people go, Colin, this former employee's down there doing all this stuff. I thought, we did that 6 months ago. We did that exact story 6 months ago. I don't really think like that to myself. I just basically say, okay, hey, I've seen it. That I don't want to discourage people on any level for sending me stuff, because a lot of times people will send me something. They'll go, Colin, did you see this? I'm sure you already saw it. No, I didn't see it. And so I thought, well, okay, I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I'm not going to do a story we just did 6 months ago. But people keep sending it to me. I said, okay, let me just check what the hell they're talking about. And you go in there, somebody sent me something from the College Fix. Again, terrific website. Really, really keeping an eye on the racial craziness on our college campuses. It turns out the exact same thing happened this week that happened 6 months ago. A black employee, University of Maryland, guy used to work there, goes back on the campus with a can of spray paint, scrawls all these racist messages against black people. That's what they were. They were hate messages against black people, intended to make it look as if white people were doing it. And the same kind of news organizations that want us to believe that white people are setting black girls' hair on fire without giving us any examples now have a huge example, and then they totally ignore it. It took the College Fix a long time to keep asking pointed questions. Who is that guy? Who did it? Who is he? Is this another case of a black person doing, racist graffiti and pretending a white person did it? Nobody wants to answer that question, and it takes a long time. I'll tell you something. If you want to have some fun, you're not going to spend, nobody's idea of fun is calling police officers and law enforcement officials and college professors and college student body presidents and college PR people and saying, hey, was that a black person who did that thing? You're all going to get the same reaction. Everybody's going to lie their ass off to you and say the same thing. It's going to be, well, we don't know. We don't really pay attention to that, Colin. It's like, we don't really notice. I mean, I still remember 300 black people have a party every year in this little warehouse in Delaware. They don't do it anymore. They did it for like 5 years. They brought buses of black people in from every black college within 100 miles. There's a lot of them. And every year it ended up in large-scale black mob violence and gunshots. So last year they had it, this is in one of my books, 300 Delaware state troopers down there. 300 cops replied to this huge episode of black mob violence with lots and lots of fighting in the hall, out of the hall. And, nobody in the paper ever pointed out it was a black thing. So I kept calling around, finally called up the state trooper, who was one of the guys who was there, one of the communications. He's in the middle of a large-scale episode of black mob violence, right? With gunfire. Hey, this is Colin Flaherty. Yeah, I write about racial violence. Were those people black at that big riot the other night? I mean, the guy just lied. He goes, well, Colin, Mr. Flaherty, we don't really notice the race of the people there. And then, they kind of always throw it back at you like, why are you so interested in this? I'm just telling you, it's not a very pleasant way to spend an afternoon. People just basically yelling at you for being a bad person. But that's what has to be done. That's what the College Fix did to run this story down. Good for them. And now we'll close up this podcast by just reminding us one more time what Hillary said is true. The importance of listening to black people. They're telling us every day, every damn day, in every damn way, they're not really that into us. They're not into anything that we think makes this country great. Let's listen to Joy Reid talk about how, flag, country, religion, it's just a big phony baloney thing to disguise white nationalism. Jay-Z, well, black people don't want jobs. We want blah, 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 something for free that I'm supposed to give them. And we're not listening to them. That's why white people move into black neighborhoods thinking they could be down with the fellas. That's why judges look at black defendants and say, well, do you believe, this happened the other day, do you believe in grace? Well, I believe God just somehow, the judge had some kind of spiritual epiphany that revealed to him that he should let this felon go instead of sentencing him to prison. So many foolish people on the bench, so many dangerous people on the bench who just are not listening to black people, where they're just constantly telling us they're not into us. They believe that we are doing all these bad things to them that we are not doing. And even if there's no proof of it, they know we're doing it because they can read our minds and find it subconsciously. That's the level we're on now. All of us are guilty of subconscious and unconscious transgressions against black people. And if we're guilty of that, that means we deserve any punishment we get. That means if our children have to apply for a college and they're set to the back of the line because black people get preferences for going to college, that's okay. That means if you're getting the hell beat out of you, if you're near one of the colleges like the University of Minnesota, that means or American University, that's okay. You probably did something to deserve it. And even if you didn't, you've been beneficiary of this white privilege. They talk like this. That's why you deserve it. And so as all of us go about our daily business, we have to be, I'm going to steal a phrase. I don't know if the fat boy from Active Self-Deception made this phrase up or not. Situationally aware, I don't think he did. But, we have to be aware of that in our lives and in our politics and in our media and in lots of our other habits. There's an enormous amount of black on white hostility out there directed at you, and you, even though you didn't do a damn thing. If you send your kids to American University, you know what? A couple of people driving down the turnpike stopped about a month ago. They were graduates of American University. Their child goes to American University. Some people stop. They go, hey, they send me an email. Hey, Colin, I'm driving down the freeway. Can you meet? Yeah, well, they were from American University. They lived in that neighborhood. So we're sitting there talking at Starbucks. Just an hour. It's like, hey, yeah, I'd like to go out and grab a cup of coffee with you. Let's do it. They're telling me about American University and how one guy who's actually kind of a high ram. Probably, I'm not going to blow his cover, but he's actually kind of a big dog in Washington, D.C. and the firmament down there. And who's telling me the times he's been robbed near American University. He's a graduate. Kids go there. His kid was there with us, and I kind of said, hey, do you know anything about this? Has ever happened to you? And his kid was doing the angry, put-upon 19-year-old routine on me. You know, his wife's been the victim of that. He's been the victim of that on the streets and in their home. And yet now at American University, we have to teach white people to stop thinking certain things so black people can stop reading our minds, so they can stop antagonizing black people, so they will stop attacking us. Is that the way it works? Ditto in Atlanta. Oh, I'll take your word for it, Bulldog. Yeah, I'll take your word for it. That's some race hustler on the radio says every kid, black girls are having their hair set on fire. Yeah. I know all the parents are upset, but could you put at least one parent on there telling us what happened? Yeah, and I understand your 60 minutes routine of finding some hapless school employee, putting the microphone in her and forcing her to say, no. That's an old trick, and nobody's really convinced of it anymore just because we call you the Bulldog. No, Bulldog, you're full of bull. I almost said something to get myself kicked off this channel, because in this channel, we only have 2 rules. Don't be obscene or vulgar. And we speak without racism, without rancor, without apology. That's rule number 1. And rule number 2, for lots of people out there listening to this, is just don't make the black kids angry.